Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me tonight from Little John Coliseum in Clemson, South Carolina, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, you just saw Carolina lose to the Clemson Tigers 63-50 on that court. Below you and behind you, I'm interested. I've been asking you about your spots recently, AJ, and I got to ask again, man, where are you situated here today? It looks like you got a railing behind you potentially. Or
I've got a railing
going on
here. I've got another railing here. I'm holding tight because if I fall back, and I'm not as athletic as I once was, and graceful, certainly not graceful anymore. If I fall back, it's the end of AJ.
Yeah,
and you'll have a different story. But the video might go viral.
So you don't want me to cut the camera if you fall. Just keep it rolling. I'll let that happen.
I'm a team player. I take one for the team.
Exactly. We'll definitely fastball. This will be our most viewed three things if that happens. I guarantee you that. But
AJ, you just didn't lose everybody right there.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man. But let's dive into it as we always do. Like I said, 13-point loss for Carolina tonight to Clemson. I'm going to go through some stats real quick before we dive into it. Day'Ron Sharpe, kind of the shining light, I guess, for Carolina tonight, 16.8 rebounds. Caleb Love and Kerwin Walton had 9 apiece. Caleb Love was only 2 for 10 from the field, though. Garrison Brooks had 8. Leaky back with 3. Armando Bacot, who we just did a podcast on about his consistency, only 1 point tonight on 1 shot attempt in RJ Davis.
Conductor Turner, how's that?
I know, man. I'm the conductor of the Armando Bacot train. He let me down tonight, but
it derailed tonight.
It definitely derailed tonight, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And RJ Davis finished with no points for the Tar Heels tonight. But Edge, I think the first thing that stood out, scoring in the paint. I think that was the thing that really stood out for Carolina. Something they just didn't do well. 18 points to Clemson's 26 in the paint. Just overall, not a great night for Carolina down low. Like I said, you look at that. Day'Ron Sharpe had 16 points. Garrison Brooks only had 8. Armando Bacot only shot the ball 1 time. So, besides Sharpe, Carolina just didn't have a lot going on down low tonight. And, I think it reflected in the scoreline for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. And I asked Roy after the game what Clemson did or what the problem was. And he went right to the turnovers. Carolina had 17 turnovers in a low possession
too much.
So that's part of it. But, Clemson wasn't giving them lanes. Like Carolina had a few high lows with Garrison and Day'Ron early in the second half that worked. And I tweeted, I thought that would be their own night. I didn't think Clemson would be able to take that away. And they kind of did, but I also think Carolina went away from it.
Yeah.
You didn't see one of the bigs at the high post as often after that. So I think that was part of it. I think the poor ball movement affected entry. When you swing the ball well and you have the interior defense rotating a lot, you create a lot of rain. You have to create your entry lanes. And if you don't do much to create them, they're not just going to,
just pop up for you.
Pop up, by osmosis. It's not just going to, hey, there's an entry lane. You have to make it happen. And they didn't do that tonight. And they weren't very effective inside. I think they were 4 for 13 on layups, 2 for 3 on dunks. Garrison missed a dunk putback. So they were not very effective. And even, some of the times they were fouled, went to the line, they didn't shoot free throws. So even some of the opportunities where they drew fouls and got to the line, because they got the ball in the paint, they weren't converting at the free throw line. They've been awful from the free throw line the last 3 games, by the way, 49%.
Yeah.
And they had 2 misses tonight. And I know we didn't say we were going to talk about free throws. They had 2 misses tonight that were lane violations. They technically don't count as misses, but they should, because had they made them, they would have counted. And they wouldn't have had to take the extra free throws. So most of that stuff occurred from the lane too. They just weren't productive. Clemson did a nice job packing it in there. The bigs didn't get open. Armando looked like he did in that Wofford Gonzaga stretch last year.
Yeah.
He had 1 point. He only had 1 field goal attempt, Jacob. And that came with 18:39 left in the game. And then his only point was at the free throw line about a minute later. And that was it. He only had 3 rebounds. He just didn't. Like, everyone's going to have a bad night. Armando had a bad night. I guess he was kind of the way that this season has gone, where, not everybody has really been that consistent, or they've been consistently inconsistent. Maybe Armando was doing a bad game.
Yeah.
So, they just didn't get the job done inside. Day'Ron did some nice stuff, but even he missed some chippies around the rim that weren't really that contested. Maybe if a few of them had gone, maybe the game would have been a little different. And the 2 biggest misses at the rim, really 3. They cut it to 42-38, and then RJ missed a one-hander, sort of an off-balance one-hander layup. Day'Ron grabbed the miss. He could not convert, and then he put it back up. Then Garrison missed his putback attempt on the dunk. So there were 3 misses right at the rim, and it was 42-38. I thought Carolina was in a positive momentum situation there. Had they gotten that bucket, who knows what could have happened, because Clemson was starting to freeze a little bit on offense.
Mhm.
And then Carolina went through a stretch where they went 9 minutes. They scored 6 points. So
Yeah.
we're going to hit on the other things that didn't work well. It wasn't just the interior. There a lot went wrong tonight.
Yeah, overall, Carolina offensively just really struggled tonight. I mean, 50 points, the lowest point total of the season. I was looking at even last year's team broke 50 every game. So it kind of shows you how poor Carolina was offensively tonight overall. Didn't shoot the ball enough, only 44 shots to Clemson's 57. I think we were talking a little bit off camera, and that was like 20 below what their average has been over the last 7 games or so. I
Yeah,
think it's
in the
been
takeaways, I noted the last 7 games, they were averaging 65 shots a game in the
Mhm.
prior 7 before this, and they had 44 tonight. So if you don't shoot 21 times, that means those are 21 opportunities where you're not going to score.
Exactly. Yeah. And like you said, Carolina just, I think overall, you even look at some of the guys individually, their stat lines. Armando Bacot only shot the ball 1 time. I think Leaky Black only shot the ball 1 time for his only points of the game. So you even had some of your RJ Davis doesn't score. So you just got guys that not only didn't do a good job putting the ball in the basket, but just didn't take a high amount of shots anyway. And I think that obviously really reflected on the scoreline when you look at, like I mentioned earlier, Carolina barely breaking 50. And I think that came in the last 30 seconds or so.
Well, 62 possessions, they had 17 turnovers. So they turned the ball over
Mhm.
27.4% of the time. It's not a winning formula.
Yeah,
Then
it's
on
not good
top
enough.
of that, a team that regularly grabs their own misses and their offensive rebounds and second chance points are a big part of what they do. They had 7 offensive rebounds tonight, but they didn't have one until the 19:30 mark of the first half.
Mhm.
The first 19 and a half minutes of the game, they didn't have an offensive rebound. And
Mhm.
then they had 2. Dayron had 2, and he ended up scoring. So they had, 2 points. They ended up with 6 second chance points, I think, on the night. That's a big part of their offense. So only 62 possessions. So you lop off 17 right off the top because of the turnovers. Okay. So now they're down to 45. And then if you only get 7 offensive rebounds and score only 6 second chance points, you're putting a lot of pressure on a team that has only been good shooting the ball the last 5 halves coming in.
Yeah.
Put a lot of pressure on them to make stuff happen. Then Clemson does what we just talked about with the interior, and you got a lot of dribbling on the perimeter. You've got some in the first half, some really early threes by guys that shouldn't have been shooting 3 that early. So Carolina kind of narrowed down the game to a handful of possessions where they were okay possessions. Things worked well. And you can't put that kind of pressure on you against a really good defensive team and against a Clemson team that hit enough threes tonight and got some dunks. The help side defense for Carolina wasn't always there. So Clemson played a really good game. Carolina did not. And the fact that the Tar Heels reduced their number of scoring opportunities to me was probably the number 1 story of the game.
Yeah, completely
You
agree.
can't shoot the ball 44 times against anybody and expect to have a high volume game, high volume scoring
No.
game. It's just not going to happen like that. And Clemson didn't get a ton of points out the 17 turnovers. They did get 13.
Mhm.
So there's an advantage. So, if this were a football game, I know we've used a few football references here lately, but the hitting yardage would have been significantly weighed on the Clemson side tonight.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a great analogy right there, AJ. Completely agree with what you said about that. It's just, not enough shot attempts. You throw in the turnovers and the lack of possessions that Carolina had, and it's just really no surprise that Carolina really struggled tonight to put the ball in the basket. Last thing I kind of want to talk about, I think I tweeted it. Must have been towards the end of the first half, and Carolina just wasn't playing well. But I said this performance really reminded me of kind of that. It was a December, kind of late December, first week of January period. You can go even back further to that, to a handful of games early in the season for Carolina where offensively Carolina just struggled. And there's also some games in there where Carolina really, really struggled on both sides of the ball today. And I think they really did that as well against the Tigers tonight. But overall, this kind of just took you back a little bit. Carolina on such a good run of form recently, and all that kind of goes out the window tonight with just a really poor display down in Clemson.
Well, I think it was on both ends of the floor. They did a lot of chasing on defense. Clemson had a lot of wide open shots.
Yeah.
This is not a very prolific offensive team. They've been averaging 56.6 points a game since they returned from their pause, their COVID pause, and they've been blown out. But the Tar Heels, Roy was asked about the layoff. They hadn't played since last Tuesday at Pitt.
Yeah.
And he did say that they had 2 harder practices that were harder than the game. Dayron then said, though, they know what they're doing in practice, so they can't really mirror what happens in a game. I'm not really sure. To me, having, watched their games most in person, other than when I was in Miami for football, I sensed early on that there wasn't the same sense of urgency they had at Pittsburgh. or in the second half against Wake, certainly for NC State. And I thought they had a sense of urgency at FSU. They just lost to a better team that day.
Yeah.
This reminded me of kind of what we saw in late November, early December, like you were saying, even Georgia Tech, where they played a team tonight that kind of had the door open. Like Clemson kicked the door open for a while in the second half.
Oh, yeah.
Carolina didn't go through. They got close. They got close to the threshold of the doorway, but they didn't go through. That trio of misses I noted a few minutes ago was part of the problem. Had they converted one of those, maybe they would have had the right mojo the rest of the way. I just felt like they were playing a little bit slower. They weren't reacting as quickly. They weren't rotating defensively as well. They were switching some defensively, and they got caught in a few mismatches. It just looked to me like they kind of took a tour back about 6 or 7 weeks, laid it all out there. And for Roy, it's a great teaching tool because it could be a reminder that, okay, guys, this is what happens when you do that. So you cannot do that anymore. You're not so gifted that you can go to Clemson against a team that's really been struggling. Clemson's 4 losses since the pause were by 25 points.
I know,
They were getting routed. Duke is struggling terribly, and they blew out Clemson. It was the game was over right away. So this is a teaching tool for Roy. Look, we didn't like our December team very much. We didn't like the way we played. We were all very frustrated. Well, guys, you don't want to return there again. You saw tonight what happens when you do that. So if you're going to look at a positive, sometimes you need a reminder in early February. Maybe they were getting too big for their britches. Who the heck knows? I know that when Roy was asked a couple of weeks ago or last week or whenever it was, do you think he'd turn the corner? If you've covered him long enough, you knew what the response was going to be. And it was, of course, heck no. That was just 5 halves. And you and I talked about that from Pittsburgh the other night when I said, look, they played well for 5 halves. That doesn't override the previous 27. Well, now these two are lumped in with the previous 27. So they have an obligation to kind of play like they did in the 5 halves when they had the Durham this weekend. And the opportunity will certainly be there. And they're going to meet a team that's going to be as charged up as can be to play them because Duke must win that game. I think Carolina's close to the must-win scenario because this was a quad 1 loss tonight. This is a quad 1 loss because road games 1 through 75, that's a quad 1. Clemson's rated in the 50s or low 60s. So Carolina's now 0-5 in quad 1 games where the teams are right now. And people need to remember very quickly, that changes from week to week because it depends on where the team is at the time that you crunch the numbers. Right now, they're 0-5 against quad 1 teams. They go to Duke this weekend. Right now, Duke would still be a quad 1 game on the road. If they win that, they would be 1-5, but it depends on where Duke ends up on Selection Sunday. Ultimately, that's when you know what the quad 1, 2, 3, and 4 teams are.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely a here's what not to do moment for Carolina tonight as they lose 63-50.
Yeah, big time reminder. Plaster it on the wall, and it shouldn't be any issue for the guys to understand. Okay, December, January, we got it. Understood.
Yeah, I think today was, like you say, kind of a flashback to what we saw during parts early in the season for sure as Carolina loses tonight 63-50 down in Clemson, South Carolina in Littlejohn Coliseum. That's going to do it for us, AJ. I'm going to let you run. I know you got plenty of work to do, man. As always, guys, if you've enjoyed the video, be sure to like it. Be sure to share it. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.